This is information you're going to want to make sure you pay attention to, especially as we go into another year, a new year. And no matter when you're watching this, as I'm recording this, we're going into another year. But even if you're into that year, this is going to be highly, highly valuable for you. Okay, so what am I talking about, Darin? What are you talking about, Darin? What do you mean? What I mean has to do with something that's huge but rarely discussed, rarely talked about in the world of multifamily, but it's so important, especially if you fit into that category that I just described. And so what I'm talking about is actually simple to understand, but needs to be foundational. And I mean foundational in terms of not only maximizing return, maximizing an exit out of a multifamily property, but also making sure you have enough real good inventory of multifamily investment properties coming at you, crossing your desk, so to speak, to make sure you get into not only the right investment, but the best multifamily investment you could potentially get into. Okay, it has to do with the figure I just drew on my board, a pretty simple figure, a triangle. Okay, as you know, a triangle is supported by three sides. So each side supports the other. And so when you're looking at the Garman Multifamily Triangle, that's exactly what it is. It's a triangle of supports. Okay, it's a triangle of supports. Okay, and what you're going to find out there, if you're looking at other multifamily investment alternatives, you're not going to find this triangle. Nobody talks about how important the multifamily triangle is, especially the multifamily triangle that I use and that my investment partners have been using now, going on well over 30 years. Okay, so what's this triangle about, Darin? What do you mean? How can something like a shape of a triangle have such a big impact on me being a successful, especially passive, multifamily investor? Well, let's start out with the first part of this triangle. So remember, every side of the triangle supports the other side. They all support each other. Okay, so the first one, and I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to go and put here Garman Capital. Okay, capital, but I want to focus on the word capital. Okay, so a triangle, a successful multifamily triangle that's going to be foundational to a fantastic multifamily investment has to start with capital. Right? Has to start with being able to raise capital. And not only being, good at raising capital, but the right capital. Where does the capital come from? How is the capital going to be deployed? And do we have enough capital in order to make sure that we're going to be making a really, really good investment? Okay? Because if you don't have the capital, you can't really be out there looking for good multifamily investments, can you? I mean, I guess you could. You could spend time looking for multifamily investing, or investments that you may want to own and invest in. But if you don't have the capital part of this nailed down, you're pretty much wasting time, right? So that's part one of this side. But part two of this side is when you have a reputation, decades and decades of reputation of being a investor that has capital to invest, what do you think owners of multifamily properties do when they're ready to sell? They contact you. What do you think brokers out there do when they know you have a really good side of capital raising? Where do you think brokers go to when they have usually an off market, which is what we prefer, an off market apartment community to sell? They come to us. Why? Because they know we have the capital in order to look at buying that asset. So what does that translate into? That translates into two main things, and I've already kind of said them. Number one, the ability for inventory to consistently come to us that ordinarily wouldn't, because we are able to invest in the project because we have the capital to invest in. So we're constantly raising capital. We're constantly having conversations with investors about raising capital. Okay, why? Well, we want the investors, our partners, to have good real estate investments in multifamily, obviously. But the power that we have when we have a side of capital raising and the amount of inventory we're able to see, man, it's a lot. It makes a huge difference. We have more properties across our desk. Okay, so you want to be lined up with somebody when it comes to multifamily investing that has this same side of the triangle, consistently raising capital, but more importantly, known in the marketplace as the go-to person for multifamily selling. I've got an off-market property I want to sell. I've got a property I want to get rid of. I got a property I need to sell quickly, etc. Who should I contact? Where should I go? We're going to get that. Okay, so that's one side of the multifamily triangle. Of course, there are three sides of this. Okay, so we want to have someone that's got this capital raising going on at 24/7 all of the time. All right, okay, pretty easy. Now let's get to something that you rarely see out there as a second side of the triangle. You want a very prolific and successful multifamily brokerage business as another side of the triangle. Okay, so what do I mean by a prolific, active, successful multifamily brokerage business? So for example, if you are an apartment owner in our market, in my market, you know who I am, you know where I'm at, you know my phone number, you know my email address, and you probably know where I live too. Okay, well, why is that? Because we have a brokerage business that sells 80+% of multifamily communities in our area, in our region. When owners decide they want to sell, they call us, they send us an email, they send us a text, they say, hey guys, I'm ready to sell my property. Can you guys put it on the market for me and get the property sold for me? Okay, now remember what I just said here. Over 80% of apartment community owners in this market, when the day comes when their mind were like, I'm ready to sell. I got to get going. I got to sell the property. Who do they end up calling? Who do they end up contacting? They end up contacting us because we have a 30+ year successful business of selling apartment communities as a real estate broker. Okay, so we're going to get most of those calls. We're going to get most of those emails, those texts when those owners are ready to sell their property. Okay, so what's the significance of this? Well, think about it. You probably have already surmised what the significance of this. Think of the inventory that we consistently have coming in week after week, month after month, year after year. A lot of inventory. Now, admittedly, there's a lot of that inventory that are really good properties that we're going to put on the market, sell for the owner, they get a good sales price, they make a good profit, and everybody moves on and moves off into the sunset. They're not necessarily the kind of investment property that say you may want to invest in and own. Maybe it is, but a lot of times it might not be, but a lot of times it is. Guys, you wouldn't believe the amount of off-market opportunities, off-market properties our brokerage business sells year in and year out that only our investors know about, that only investors that have registered with us, raised their hand and said, hey, Darin, hey guys, I want to know more about what you're doing, be involved in what you're doing. This consistent flow of inventory combined with the capital arm part of our business, do you see how powerful this is already? The amount of inventory, the amount of availability, and the amount of, at the end of the day, guys, opportunities that we see as a result of this is extremely powerful with these two sides. You're going to find not many other investors, capital raising companies, multifamily ownership investment companies have this dynamic. And this is where they actually fall short many times. They may have this kind of thing figured out. Yeah, we're good at raising capital and going out and buying stuff, but do they have the kind of opportunity flow that you really, really want and expect as a passive investor that expects a successful multifamily investment, especially if you're busy, you got a career, you're doing other things, you got to focus your time there. You don't have time to be focusing on this. You want this kind of a successful side, two sides to what you're looking at doing. So I highly, highly recommend whoever you align yourself with your next multifamily investment at a minimum, and I'm not even hit the third side yet, at a minimum has these two sides here. If you don't, you are leaving money and opportunity on the table if you don't do that. Okay, all right, so I've covered two sides. And once again, we've covered the capital raising side and the opportunities that brings from a investment standpoint and opportunity standpoint. We talked about the successful brokerage business, decades and decades of successful brokerage business operating continually and consistently, and how important having both of these sides is with the Garman Multifamily Triangle. But there's a third, and this is the most important side of things, guys, and that's why it's at the base here. That's why it's at the base. And it's so simple, but so many people, so many investors miss this, and they don't pay nearly as much attention to this, and it's simply this. Management. Okay? Guys, I want you to think about this. I just said that out of these three sides, the side that hardly gets any discussion, not much attention, not nearly as much due diligence on the side of an investor as it should, is management, specifically property and asset management. Okay, I want you to think about this and why this is at the base and why it's so important. You can have the best opportunity on paper. This property, this multifamily community can be in the best location, have the best units in terms of amenities, have everything going for it you can possibly imagine. You could possibly imagine, for a great multifamily investment. But if you don't get this right, this management part of it right, doesn't make a difference. It doesn't make a difference, because if you don't get this management part right, three important words: you will lose. I'll say it again. You will lose. Okay, how do I know? Been doing this for over 30 years. That's how I know. And there's no algorithm for that kind of experience. Okay, so when you have a management system, proprietary management processes, systems in place, that when you take over properties and you operate and manage them and you do that successfully, oh my God, what a huge difference. Not a huge difference in terms of increase in income that the properties have, not only increase in exit amount that the properties have, increase in return that the properties have, increase in tax savings that the properties have, and I can go on and on and on, and it all orbits around how good is your management? How good is it? What kind of proprietary systems do you have in place? What are your processes? What's your lead generation like? What's your follow-up like? What's your day-to-day operations look like with your management team? And that also includes things like maintenance. What about your maintenance team? How dialed in are they culturally? How dialed in are your managers culturally? How dialed in is all of that? Guys, if you don't have this part figured out, and I know I sound like a broken record when I say this, none of this matters. Nothing here matters. Okay, so when you're looking at the triangle and you look at where I'm going and why this is the base of the Garman Multifamily Triangle and our multifamily investment triangle. It's the management. It's boring, day-to-day, fall asleep management and asset management of properties. Okay? Boring is smart. Please write these three words down or somehow remember these three words. Boring is smart. We realized this decades ago, that once we get smart with this boring part of operating owning, investing in really good multifamily assets, this is where the multifamily assets go. They go just like that, straight up, okay? Because of all three sides, but foundationally because of that. And so when busy entrepreneurs, founders, investors, CEOs, physicians, when they team up with us and become one of our partners and get involved with us, this is what they are getting. They get this multifamily triangle working for them day after day, month after month, year after year. Now, am I saying that you exclusively work with us because of this? I'm of course suggesting that you want to be thinking about that because of how important that I've found this to be over the last 30 years. But at the end of the day, you want somebody that has this kind of multifamily triangle working for them too. If they don't, am I saying that you're wasting your time? Am I saying that you're going to lose money? Am I saying that it's a really bad idea? No. But what I'm saying is the percentage of chances of maximizing and having a fantastic multifamily investment experience are 10x when you have a multifamily triangle in place. You see, because what we found over the last 3 decades, and I said it before, I said that that simple is smart. I talked about that. Boring is smart. I talked about that. Because look, guys, we got 3 simple sides here. And by focusing on these 3 simple sides, the results, fantastic. If you ignore these sides, every side you ignore, that investment it performs a little below par. And then you ignore another side and then it's not quite so good. And then you ignore another side and then it's not quite so good. Okay, so 3 big questions to ask yourself as I wrap this up. Okay, number 1, are you a serious multifamily investor, especially if you're passive? Again, busy founder, CEO, you're a physician, entrepreneur, sales leader. If you're serious, you've got to be thinking about the multifamily triangle being a part of what you want to do and how you want to do it. Number 2, you need to vet the triangle. Vet the triangle. What does vet the triangle mean? It's pretty simple. Once you've discovered someone you want to work with and they have a multifamily triangle similar to the Garman Multifamily Triangle, now it's time to ask questions about all 3 sides. How does this work? How does the brokerage business work? Tell me about the brokerage business. How does that work? Take me through a typical day in the brokerage business. Take me through a typical month. What does that look like? Transactionally, what does that look like? Capital raise. How often are you raising capital? Who are you raising capital from? Where are you deploying your capital? Management. Take me through some of your management systems and processes. By the way, I might want to come out and check things out. Maybe I want to visit you and see the management systems and processes that you say are in place and working. And that's number 3. Number 3 is you want to make sure that you check and verify. Okay? You check and verify. You check and verify that all 3 of these sides of the triangle are going on at the same time. You don't just take somebody's word for it. Oh yeah, that Garman Multifamily Triangle, oh yeah, we got that going on. We've had that going on. No. You want to be checking, verifying, digging into and doing due diligence about this, making sure that the multifamily triangle is going, whether that's a personal visit, whether it's calling references, you've got to be digging into it a little bit more. Do not take people's word for it. Dig into it and find out, okay? 3 big tips for you when it comes to the multifamily triangle, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna wrap this up. We've talked about how important a multifamily investment triangle is. We talked about the Garman Multifamily Triangle. We've got the capital side of things, the capital raising side of things, huge. We talked about the opportunities that are a result of that. Then we talked about the opportunities that are a result of a successful, decades old brokerage business that continues to operate, grow, and expand. And then we brought it all home with the foundation, right? Property and asset management and how important it is. All right, guys, hopefully what I've talked about here makes sense. Hopefully you've at least seen some glimpse of this somewhere. If you haven't, dive into this, dig into this, and find out more, because it is so important that you have a triangle like this working for you on your next multifamily investment. And again, the results, we talked about that, when you have this kind of triangle, pretty much speak for themselves. All right, appreciate you. Thanks for being with me. Questions, comments on the Garman Multifamily Triangle. We'd love to hear from you, and we'd love to get your comments. All right, take care. We'll see you later. All right, bye-bye.